Welcome everybody, my name is Anton, and today I wanted to show you how you can provision your own FHIR server to develop whatever application that you want. In this video, I'm going to be showing how to develop an ASP.NET Core against a MeldRx workspace, which has a FHIR API. Don't forget, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the comment section. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So I have a couple of things that are open. First of all, I am already signed in into MeldRx. I have the HL7 FHIR documentation open, and I already have an ASP.NET Core empty template application created. Okay. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MeldRx and I'm going to register an app. Now, once again, let me make this just a little bit bigger. I'm going to say that this is my app. I'm going to create a provider app. It's going to be a confidential one. I will select some scopes, specifically profile, OpenID, and patient star.star, which means for my patient, I can write and read any resources. Okay. Then for the redirect URLs. So my application in the launch settings is going to be running currently on 7245. And just in case, I'm going to delete other profiles so they don't collide with this. I'm going to test this out really quickly. So if I open up the terminal, do a quick .NET run, I'm going to see that my application indeed started on this URL. I'm just going to copy this URL, paste this into here, and I will specify signin-OIDC. Okay. Next step, we are not linking with any external EHRs for this video, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip this. And then, yes, I do want a workspace. This is going to be my WS, my workspace. With our app and workspace created, we can go ahead and start setting up our application. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the application and close the other terminals, collapse the terminal, close the launch settings, and start setting some of this up. So first of all, what I'm going to need for my ASP.NET Core application is the OpenID Connect package, which is going to allow me to do authentication using the OpenID Connect protocol. So I'm looking for Microsoft ASP.NET Core Authentication OpenID Connect. Let's go ahead and add this to our application. This will enable us to, on the builder services, first of all, we're going to add authentication here. We're going to be able to add OpenID Connect here. And I'm just going to say that this is going to be MeldRx. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the NuGet package manager over there. And over here are going to be some options. All right. So what do we want to put in here? Well, we want to put in some information that is relating to our resources that we have created over here. So one of them will be the client ID. Let's go ahead, copy that, paste that into here. We want things like client secret. So options, client secret, set that over here. Other things that we want to specify in here will be response type. So OpenID response type, it's going to be code. So I think by default, ASP.NET Core sets this to ID token, but we are going to go ahead and set it to code. Our authentication server at MeldRx uses PKC. So if you have options for use PKC, you can see here somewhere it says that this is going to be enabled by default. So we don't need to touch that. Another thing that we want here is if we go into scope, let's just clear that just in case Microsoft decided to add some kind of scopes there by default. And we're going to add the scopes that we have configured on our application. So I'm going to open this in a new tab. Let's go ahead and manage the application over here. I'll take, I didn't want to select all of them. Let me actually just refresh the page here. I wanted to copy them. Come back over here. I'll remove MeldRx API and let's copy this a couple of times. We don't want this here. OpenID here. This one over here. And like that. So we are configuring a list of scopes. Another option that you want here is save tokens set to true. What this is going to do is the tokens that are going to be obtained as part of this process, they are going to get saved inside a cookie. What cookie will they get saved in? Well, for this, we're going to need to add another authentication schema, which is going to be the cookie authentication schema. Let's go ahead and also set cookie on the add authentication, which is going to set it as the default authentication schema. So when we're going to try to load the authentication session, we're going to try to look for it inside this cookie. Now, once we exchange the code for a token, like the access token and the ID token that we're requesting as part of OpenID, we are going to go ahead and package that up into our cookie. We need to tell the configuration over here that it should package it up into this cookie over here. So we're going to take this cookie. I'm going to go into options and we're going to say that the sign-in schema should be this cookie schema. Okay. The only information that is missing from the options now is the information about what workspace should you be connecting to. In our case, it is this workspace ID, or here's the workspace URL. You're going to be connecting to this workspace. So the way that you do it is through an audience parameter, but this configuration doesn't really allow you to specify the audience. You have to do it here a little bit awkwardly, as when some events occur on redirect to identity provider. So when you get redirected, you get a chance to edit the redirection context that is occurring. So for now, let's go ahead and specify that this is a Lambda. We're going to say that we're returning task completed and not do anything here just yet. We're just going to make sure that we understand that we have the protocol message. This is the thing which is going to construct the redirect URL once we're going to our workspace to authenticate. One of the things that we'll have here are authentication properties, which we specify when we sign in. Okay. So I'm not going to be building out a lot of UI or pages. I really just want to demonstrate how to connect to a workspace and create some resources in there and then start reading them. So I want to really take a lot of the details of logging in, having some kind of button for that, etc. I'm just going to make a request to the login endpoint over here. And this is going to return a results.challenge, which should trigger the authentication for MeldRx, which is going to provoke the redirect. So where you place this is on this side. So on the right-hand side, you specify the schema that you want to challenge. And over here, you specify the authentication properties, which are later on going to be available over here, as we've just witnessed. So let me go ahead and put this on a new line and this on a new line, so it's a little bit easier to see where I'm putting this information. So on the authentication properties, after we have gone ahead, redirected to the external site and have come back, we actually want to specify the redirect URI. So after we process the token at this middleware, we will just say that, look, I want to land back on the homepage over here. Okay. And now as for which workspace we want to go to, you should have parameters over here. I'm going to say that, look, the audience should be the URL for the workspace. Okay. How you get this value into here for ASP.NET Core or for any other programming language you work with is really up to you, as long as you understand which information goes where. And I'm going to highlight how this AUD parameter ends up in the eventual redirect request. Okay. So in the properties that we are passing in here, they will eventually end up here. We're going to go to parameters and we're going to try to get a value out, which is going to be this AUD over here. Now, parameters, they are capable of storing objects, so we don't really know the type, which is being stored there. So for us, this is going to be audience URL object. Okay. Let's say that if this is going to occur, we're going to go to the context, protocol message, and in here, we are going to add the parameters, which is going to be the AUD parameter and this value over here. We can do a little verification that if we do have this value and this value is indeed a string, so this is going to be a URL string, we can go ahead and assign it. So if this is happening, it seems like we should have a valid audience parameter. Cool. One of the things that we're actually missing here at this point, as I said, we're going to get redirected. And as we're coming back, we have specified on the app screen over here, if I scroll down here, this sign in OIDC redirect URL. So this is where the code gets exchanged for the token. So inside ASP.NET Core, in this options configuration, we want the callback path, which is going to be this path that we have specified over here. So all you're doing is really on this line, you're saying, whenever we land on this path, I'm expecting to have a code in my URL, which I'm going to exchange for the token. And after I have gotten the token, I'm going to save it inside a cookie that I'm going to produce for this schema. And then later on, as we're going to try to interact with the current authentication session, it's always going to try to get it from this cookie. Okay, so I think this is about a good amount of detail here. We have quite enough, but the only thing I really want to do is inspect the token that we're getting that is going to be saved inside the cookie. So I'm going to delete the results that I was returning over there, give this a body, and from the HTTP context, CTX, I want to get a token, which is going to be the access token. Put a semicolon here. This will have to be asynchronous. So I'll make this as an asynchronous lambda. And let me format this just a little bit. And there we have it. So with that, let's go ahead and restart the application. I'm going to go ahead and open up the URL. And I'm greeted with an exception of provide authority, metadata address configuration, or configuration manager. Basically, I have provide authority. It wants the authority URL, which is really a good error. We haven't specified anywhere to which server we're going to be, well, who's going to be the authority of the token, really. We are specifying the audience parameter over here, but that's not enough. So app.MeldRx is going to be the authority. So on the options, we're going to have the authority over here, and we're going to specify it. Okay. Let's go ahead and restart the application after the changes that we've made. Come back to the website and okay, so here I am greeted with a 404. The configuration is valid and the service has managed to start up. I'm going to go ahead and open the network tab where we can inspect all the good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and type in login. This is going to redirect me to the authorization endpoint. And let me quickly configure big request rows so you can see these. I'm going to open up the authorize really quickly so we can see the payload. So in the headers over here, this is the redirect URL that is going to be constructed once we're logged in. So when I'm calling challenge, this is the location that we're getting redirected to. And here are all the parameters that we're passing. So the scope, the PKCE stuff, the response mode, response mode doesn't matter too much, the response type that we have configured, the redirect URL, etc., as well as the audience parameter. So it really is just a query parameter that you're adding to the redirect request. Okay, let's go ahead, close this because I'm already signed in at my account where I am configuring my applications. I, as the owner of this workspace, have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, yes, this app can have access of my information to the scopes that I have specified. I'm going to go ahead and close the network tab. I'm going to go to the token, and here is the token. I can put it into jwt.io to inspect what is inside of it, etc. Right now, I'm not going to do it. All I'm really doing with this is verifying that, yes, there is a token on my backend that I am capable of accessing in this manner. Now, since I have this token, I should be able to call the FHIR API. For this, I'm going to open up the NuGet package manager, and I'm going to add a FHIR package, HL7 FHIR R4. I'm going to add that to my application. Once that has installed, I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. And again, I'm not going to have my post requests because, again, I don't have a UI. I don't want to start opening something like Postman or Insomnia or start creating curl requests. It's all, it's a little bit too much. So I'm just going to create these endpoints, which I can trigger with a simple GET request to, for example, read a patient and create a patient. Okay, put a little bit of space in between, and we can't really read a patient without creating a patient. So let's go ahead and start here. First of all, we're gonna need to make an HTTP request, and to properly initialize an HTTP client in ASP.NET Core, you have to register add HTTP client with the dependency injection container. Once you have done that, you can go ahead and inject an HTTP client into your handler, right? So dependency injection will take care of this. Over here, we are getting the token, and on the HTTP client, default request headers, we can go ahead and slap on a new authentication header, bearer, that's not how you spell bearer, and a token right over here on the end. So we have an authenticated HTTP client. Now we basically need a client which knows how to interact with the FHIR server, which is the Firely package that we have just installed. For this, we're going to create a new FHIR client. The very first parameter that it accepts is an endpoint. So we're going to take our API endpoint, supply it over here. And just because I'm working with very little real estate, let me collapse the solution here as well. I'm going to supply the HTTP client as a second parameter, and a third parameter is FHIR client settings. So new FHIR client settings. They have very good documentation around how all of this stuff works. Basically, when you're creating these settings, you do want it to cache it as a singleton, and the preferred format, you want to set this to JSON. So resource format, JSON. Otherwise, this client is also capable of serializing stuff to XML. However, our server works with JSON only. Okay, so this is going to be the FHIR client. And here the FHIR client is going to be reading a patient from some kind of ID. So let's say string location. So the reason I am using location instead of an ID is because when you're making this request here on the type, you specify what you want the result to be deserialized to. Otherwise, you have to specify patient/ID that you're going to be reading, right? So over here, we say location, and we're just going to go ahead and return the result after we await for it. Okay, so this is how we're going to read the patient. I'm not going to do a lot of abstraction around putting this in some kind of factory so I can create the FHIR client in the same way reliably. Those kind of code optimizations, you can do them yourself. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this handler, place this over here. And here, instead of reading the patient, I am going to create a patient. And here, we don't want to supply a location, we rather want to supply a patient document. So instead, what I'm going to create is a public class const with just some constants, which is going to say public const string patient JSON. Okay, and this is going to be I can't remember the name for the syntax, but it's going to be a big blob of JSON within this string. Okay, for this, I have the FHIR documentation open, where I'm going to go to resources. I'm going to search for patient. Here it is right here. I'm going to go into examples and general person example right over here. Grab the JSON. So from top all the way to bottom, copy that, come back to my code and paste this over here. So there is my patient. Let me scroll all the way back to the top. I'm going to go into const, and I will actually need this patient object, which is coming from the FHIR library, right? So from HL7 FHIR model. So let's go ahead and use JSON serializer. We're going to use system.text.json. We're going to deserialize to this patient object, this const patient JSON. Right? So obviously this patient JSON is going to be either constructed by yourself, or is going to be submitted by a model, or perhaps by another API, or perhaps by a native application. There are tons of ways that you can get your hands on this patient JSON, right? In addition to this, because of how the FHIR library has been built in C#, it is important that we specify correct options. So we specify JSON serializer option, and this library introduces a new extension function on this object for FHIR, which converts these options to work with these FHIR resources efficiently. So things like enums will be stored as strings. If you don't know exactly what resource you are converting to, this is actually going to determine the correct POCO under the hood, okay? Granted, you don't want to do this every single time. You want to create these options once and cache them, similar to the FHIR client settings, okay? Once we have the patient, let's go ahead and create the patient, all right? So we're passing the patient to the FHIR client that is going to make a call to our workspace and create the patient in there, all right? So with that, let's go ahead and start the application, .NET run. So the application has launched. Let's come back to the browser. Let's double check that we still have the token. We do. This is definitely not Polish. We're going to create patient and I have a required parameter, string location. This is because I have forgot to remove a parameter from here, which is okay. And let me just double check that the string location is still there. All right. Now let's go ahead and quickly restart the application. On that, let's refresh this page. And there we have the patient that has been created within the workspace. Once this has been created, let's grab the identifier from here. I don't know if you can see this or if this actually makes it better. Maybe have a little pretty print, but here's the identifier. It is the patient. So when I actually go to query the patient, the location, this parameter which I'm setting, as I mentioned before, has to be patient / the identifier, okay? And lo and behold, we set the location and we are capable of now querying or using FHIR queries against our workspace. So this is effectively how you build an ASP.NET Core application that is capable of connecting with a MeldRx workspace. And now you can start using this workspace as a FHIR API to develop your application. Now, MeldRx workspaces can do a lot more than just store FHIR data and allow you to query that FHIR data. So if you would like to find out more, please check out our documentation and other videos on this channel. This will be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, if you did enjoy it, leave a like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. We would love to help you out. Thank you for tuning in and have a good day.